Kodak Gold 200 is everywhere right now. Every film photography forum, every YouTube channel, every Instagram grid. Someone is shooting it, someone is recommending it, someone's asking about it. I used Kodak Gold 200 on 35mm back in the 80s and 90s, and I started shooting it again a few years ago when it was introduced in medium format. And so after using this film quite a bit for the last few years in medium format, I think I have some useful insights that I can share with you as to why that film has captured so much attention, and whether or not that attention is actually deserved. So that's what I want to break down today. Kodak Gold 200 is a color negative film. It's daylight balanced and ISO 200, and it's been around in various forms since 1988. For most of its life, it was considered a consumer film, the kind of thing you'd find in a drugstore, load into a point-and-shoot camera, and not to think much about. It might stay in your camera for a few years before you got it developed. When Gold 200 was introduced in medium format in 2022, this was a significant moment. Suddenly, a film that had been associated with, casual snapshot photography was available in a format that serious photographers could actually use, and the results surprised a lot of people. I was really excited when I saw that it was going to come out in 120, but I didn't have super high expectations necessarily. Every time I've used Gold 200 on medium format, I've been incredibly happy with the results. I primarily shoot Gold 200 through the Mamiya 645, which gives me a 6 by 4.5 centimeter negative. That's a meaningfully larger piece of film than 35mm, and it changes what Gold 200 is capable of in ways I'll get to shortly. Some of the limitations of the larger grain and lack of dynamic range that are present in most consumer films become less of an issue on larger formats. To understand why Gold 200 specifically is having this moment, I think you have to understand the broader context of what's been happening with film photography over the last few years. Film never disappeared entirely, but somewhere around 2020 it started really growing again. And not just among people who had always shot film, kind of like myself, but there's been this new generation of photographers who started to pick it up very deliberately and by choice because it's offering something different from photographing on digital. And I think for most of us, the fact that the experience of shooting on film is so much different than digital, that it can allow us to slow down and take fewer frames, pull back a bit from the very busy digital world that we live in otherwise, and be able to practice photography without a computer being involved at every step of the process. And as the price of film and processing has continued to increase, fairly significantly over the last few years, a lot of photographers start asking themselves a very reasonable question, and that's, what film is going to give me the best results for the money? I typically buy Gold 200 in these, 5-roll Pro Packs that they sell. For me, if I weren't buying Gold 200, I would probably be buying Portra 160. I really like both Gold 200 and Portra 160, but I use them in different ways. For me, Portra 160 is my choice when I need the absolute cleanest negative that has a lot of dynamic range, the most sharpness, the most raw material, the most data to work with. I love shooting Portra 160, I love the color saturation, and I love the tonality. But currently I have a 3-year-old toddler, and I do a lot of photography of her with my Mamiya 645. And I just love how Gold 200 on medium format looks. It's got more contrast than Portra 160. It's got a bit more saturation kind of out of the gate, a little bit less dynamic range, and not as much latitude. But it completely captures the vibe of what good color negative film looked like in the late 80s and the early 90s. Very honest, it's fun, the colors are bright. Skin tones in particular have a really nice softness and glow to them that I find it just, genuinely beautiful, and it doesn't feel artificially warm. And so while it's not, and I don't think Kodak considers it this way, and I don't consider it this way, a professional film, there's sort of a gentleness to the way this film handles light that I really like, and it makes the images, pretty easy to work with once they're scanned, aside from the fact that the film has a pretty thin negative base, and so getting it flat can be a little challenging. It's a very, very thin base, thinner than you expect. And we talked about the grain a little bit on 645. On 35mm, the grain's definitely visible. I think, depending on who you are, you might find it a little bit rough. I feel this way about most 35mm films, so it's probably too rough for me most of the time, but I did shoot some during Christmas. I shot a roll of my kiddo making some baked goods of some sort with my wife, and so I'm sharing those here. On the larger medium format negatives, it's just the grain structure really opens up and becomes very painterly, but it can be, just a little bit much. It can be distracting at times on 35, especially if you underexpose. I think the happiest surprise I ever had shooting Gold 200 so far was on this day when I was walking around with my family and my kiddo, and we were looking at the tulips that were growing outside of our home and throughout the neighborhood. And I very specifically chose Gold 200 because I thought that it would do a really great job of capturing, how the colors of these flowers looked. And when I got them back, it was just, sometimes you get a roll back and it's exactly, kind of what you hoped for, maybe even a little better. And that's what happened on this day. And it's just, look at me, I'm sharing these images of flowers. This is exactly how I remember the color looking and how I hoped to capture this memory. I think one of the reasons Gold 200 has gained so much credibility lately, beyond it just being available at a great price, is that the 120 release forced people to evaluate it in a serious way for the first time. When you start loading it into a Mamiya or a Hasselblad or Bronica, God help you, you're making a deliberate choice. I will often shoot Gold 200 alongside more expensive films on the 645. If I'm going on a trip or if I'm going on a shoot, I'm often bringing, a variety of speeds. And so I love having Gold 200 as an option, especially for daylight photography of people. To me, it really excels in people photography. I can definitely say that I don't shoot Gold 200 just because it's inexpensive. I think it's a great benefit, and it allows me to buy more of it and shoot more of it and to have more film on hand at any given time. I don't feel like I'm giving up anything. It's not as versatile as Portra 160, and the grain is not as fine. So, those are your trade-offs. To me, Gold 200 offers a classic color negative film look, where Portra 160 in medium format can be scanned and it could totally be mistaken for a digital image, whereas you couldn't really do that with Gold 200. There's one more dimension to Gold 200's popularity that I think is worth acknowledging, and it's far less technical than everything I've really talked about so far, and that's just that this film looks like memory. The warmth, the softness, the grain, it produces images that feel very emotionally familiar in a way that can be hard to quantify. It looks like the photographs that came back from the drugstore in the 80s and 90s. It looks like the holidays and the birthdays and the ordinary afternoons, that people were capturing with a point and shoot. And I think that quality is something that people are really searching for right now. And so, is the hype justified? My answer is mostly yes, with a few caveats. Gold 200 is not a film for every situation. It's daylight balance, so low light will kind of expose its limitations rather quickly if you're shooting under tungsten or mixed artificial light without correction. The color cast is going to be really noticeable, whereas Portra 160 can handle that a little bit better. But if you are doing daylight shooting for portraits and people and landscapes and documentary kind of work, and broadly just everyday photography that most of us do most of the time, I think Gold 200 is a great choice on both medium format and 35mm. If you've never shot medium format before, I really encourage you to try it. It's not as scary as it might seem if you've only shot 35mm. If you have questions about making the jump from 35 to medium format, leave them down in the comments below, and I will try to make some videos about that. And so the reason everybody is shooting Gold 200 right now is not because it's perfect. It's because it's really honest, and it does what it does really openly and consistently, and it costs a lot less than its competition. And it produces images that feel like photographs rather than digital files. And for me, that's enough. More than enough, actually. Thank you so much for watching the Photo Files and for spending some time with me today. Please hire me for your photographic needs. My email address and website are on the screen. And check out the related videos on screen right now for more Photo Files adventures. And thank you for watching.